Well, thank each and every one of you for allowing me to come and speak to you today. As you can see from the screen, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's a little different than South Florida. One thing you do not have to worry about here is hypothermia, that's for sure. But it was the first time in a while that I've been in an ocean where I didn't have to worry about the water being in the low 50s. So it was great to be out there these past couple of days and just enjoying my time down here. What I'm going to talk to you a lot about today is a couple things. One of them is the hardening process in life and what we go through and each of the challenges that we face and why it makes us a stronger person, not only in the workforce, but in our life in general. We're going to talk about making sure we focus on keeping our family first in our lives, work a close second, and never forgetting to pursue the passions that we love in life.
The Ocean 7 was a group of channel swims around the world, which is regarded in the open water community as pretty much the 7 hardest channel swims in the world. We started in August 2009 whenever I decided to swim the English Channel, and that was the creation of the Forever Fund, which goes to help families and children at the infant cardiothoracic ward at the hospital.
Through the Forever Fund, Darren is going to be able to help parents in need who may need funds for parking, for gasoline to travel to and from the hospital, for groceries, or even for child care for other siblings that may not be able to be at the hospital or taken care of by another family member.
Darren Miller and what he does, it's amazing. Even as he's raising money for the Heart Institute, he's also, in many significant ways, representing that very same challenge that families go through every day. When you see the story of what he goes through to reach these really unbelievable challenges that he takes on, it's amazing.
I've always been involved in a lot of charitable giving in my life, and that means a lot to me as far as what we're doing this for. So every penny that we bring in, every penny that we bring in through the website goes right back to the hospital at the end of the month.
I think it's pretty amazing in and of itself to have repeatedly swum the English Channel, which is certainly one of the greatest challenges. But I think what drives him more than that challenge is to help these kids. And that makes it all the more amazing. Those hours spent swimming the channel, and what's driving him is not his own personal success, but his desire for successful outcomes and happiness for these families.
It's been special to see Darren's heart to care about others, and particularly children, and to see life in the context of greater than himself.
My grandmother was a huge motivation in my life, and I realized that the biggest thing that we find today is that people just aren't willing to look outside the bubble. They aren't willing to look outside their little world, and we've all been given so much in life.
So the Team Forever mission was highlighted real briefly in that video, and what it is a couple of years ago, when I graduated college, I wanted to try to do something different with my life. And I was about 260 pounds out of college, and I had grown up being a swimmer in the pool, and I swam for 2 years at Penn State University in central Pennsylvania. And after I retired from swimming, I had back surgery, knee problems, just a couple things, and I graduated, and I wanted to find something different. I started running, and about 3 months after I started running, I signed up for a marathon. And what it taught me in life was that it was something that I didn't think was possible. And after being that big, running 26.2 miles on a 96-degree day up and down a mountain, it taught me the first time in my life the real meaning of pain. And after I finished that, it was at a point where I figured, okay, I'm never going to do this again, I felt. But then after that, I said, okay, what else am I capable of? It was the first time in my life that it triggered, what is it that I really can accomplish? Because I didn't think I could do something like this. After about 10 months, I had run about 3 or 4 more marathons, qualified for the Boston Marathon, and then just after that, I actually broke a bone in my foot running too far. And I signed up for and was completing what they call an ultra marathon. Has anybody heard of one of those before? So an ultra marathon, for those of you who are not aware, is any distance longer than the 26.2 miles that you do in a traditional marathon. So I'd signed up for a 50-mile trail race in the mountains of Ohio. And when I got out there, I'll never forget my surgeon's wishes to not do the race, but being a stubborn person that I was, I decided to go out and give it a shot. I was training hard. I wanted to get it done. Prior to the race, one of the greatest conversations I'd ever had was with a gentleman who was 82 years old. And he wanted to become the first 80-plus-year-old man to run 100 miles. Now, I was doing the 50-mile race, and I felt kind of like a chicken. But then when you look at this guy who was 82, and I don't know about most of you, but by the time my relatives were 82, they sure as heck weren't running any type of significant distance. But what it taught me was, especially in our sport, is that people from all around the world and all these people that I've met, they have the most amazing mindsets and the mentality to know that anything is possible when they just use their mind. Completed the race, 50 miles. Again, it was one of those lessons in punishment. And I came home, and the next couple days I went to the doctor, and I got one of those walking boots on my foot. And I was lugging that around, and right around that time I had that purpose in my life. Okay, now what? What else can I do? What am I going to do now? And again, I had grown up a pool swimmer, but I didn't know anything about open water swimming. I was reading a book at the time by Lynn Cox. Maybe some of you have heard of her before. Back in the 70s and 80s, she did a lot of amazing swims around the world to enact political change. One of them was she actually swam between 2 islands from Russia to the United States. Mikhail Gorbachev and Reagan at the time both praised her efforts. So it was really cool that at one point in history, swimming helped change the world. But what her book taught me was, again, she was similar in the fact that she didn't know anything about open water swimming, but she got into it. And I was reading her account on her swimming of the English Channel. And at 16 years old, in 1972, she set the English Channel record. And then later that year, she set the Catalina Channel record, which I thought was pretty amazing. After that, I found my purpose to say, okay, I'm going to try to go for this. I want to swim the English Channel. And my friend at the time, we were out cycling, and she was telling me about how she wanted to raise money in honor of her father for a specific purpose. He had passed away from an open heart surgery. She wanted to do something to honor his memory. Not even thinking, I just said, hey, how about you pay for me to go over and swim the English Channel? I want to raise money in honor of your dad for a specific cause. Well, that's how we started the Forever Fund at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and Team Forever is my nonprofit that we raise money for. So in honor of her father, we started a fund. The fund goes to help the infant cardiothoracic ward at the hospital. As you heard in the video, these are families that really can't afford the small costs, travel, food, lodging. We got a lot of great stories on our website talking about the families that we've helped. We've even paid mortgage bills. One of the greatest letters I ever had written to me was from a mother who unfortunately her son had passed away, but during that time, they didn't have a house to go home to. And that's something that we all need to think about. And when I speak to young people especially, I say, do you know what it's like to be given that great book of health? Every day we can get up and, I was speaking to school the other day, and you get up and you love to go to school, and some kids don't have that opportunity, right? Some young people don't have that opportunity. Some families aren't even there to then care for their child whenever they are sick. So really remembering each and every day, my speaking business, every breath a gift, what we have been given. And that's something I really want to challenge all of us to think about today, is remembering what we've been given, because there's a lot of people out there that struggle, as I'm sure we all know. But these families at the hospital, like little baby Faith here, at 11 months old, she's suffering from heart disease, and she needs a heart transplant. Now, when you look at that picture and you see me and I was interacting with the little girl, it just that emotion comes over you, as you can imagine, and you realize what you're doing it for. And that's the best thing that I tell these parents. They get your kids volunteering, get them especially to a hospital where they see kids that are suffering, and that will really allow them to know what they're about. And little baby Faith here, luckily, she did receive her heart transplant, and she is doing much better right now. But that day alone, just being there, and you could see this full room just hooked up to her, and it just really makes you aware of what you've been given. So we started to fund at the Children's Hospital, and that first year we went to train, and I realized I didn't know anything about open water swimming. But then again, that's the challenge. That's what drives me. There's not a book out there, English Channel 101, right? How to swim the English Channel. So we signed up, and we're all excited, and then we get over there, before we go, and I'm reading about it, and I'm saying, 22 miles of 58-degree water in a Speedo. Probably should have looked into this maybe a little bit more, right? Now, coming from Pittsburgh, as you can imagine, in the summertime, I think it was in the 90s, the day that we left to go over to England. But there are certain ways that you have to prepare the body to handle the cold, and you have to learn to acclimate to that cold. Now, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but really what it comes down to is when you're out there and your challenge is, I look at it as survival, right? The body is fighting to stay warm. Every half hour or so, you're fed from the boat. They'll throw a bottle out to you, high carbohydrate, high caloric intake, get that water heated up, and then they'll take like shot blocks, goo, peanut butter and jelly, bananas, things like that, anything to get those calories in your system, because you're burning so much, especially struggling through that cold of water, that you have to learn to, again, acclimate to the cold is number one. Because hypothermia, as you can imagine, I know it's hard here in Florida, but for those of you from up north, it's very traumatic, and it can be very trying on the body. The Ocean 7, what we talked about, the first one was the English Channel. First of all, I'll say that the Ocean 7 was developed by a guru out of Southern California who writes a blog that pretty much every open water swimmer in the world reads, and it's a blog that we all stay attuned to. And back in 2008, he initiated this challenge of these 7 channels that he had picked from around the world, some of them for their iconic nature, like the English Channel, and some of them for their mystery of not being known at all, such as the Suguru Channel in Japan, and other ones just for their difficulty, such as the Molokai Channel in Hawaii. But it was a grouping of 7 channels that he had developed, and he wanted to see what first person could accomplish this goal. And basically, as we went through these, in 2012, there was an Irishman who had done it, and then in 2013, this past summer, a Swedish woman, and then another American female out of Oregon, and then myself. I was number 4. But the thing that I'm most proud of for our charity is that we're the first person to get them all done on the first try. And the purpose of what I'm going to talk about today is really that mindset, that mentality, because there was something much bigger than myself working out there to have Mother Nature cooperate 7 times in a row. Some of these people had gone back, and for an example, my one friend, she came to New Zealand with me last year, bad weather, couldn't make it across. Later that summer, came to the North Channel with me. She got 16 and a half hours in 52-degree water and ended up getting pulled due to hypothermia, a quarter mile from the Scottish coast. And then this year, she went back to New Zealand, again, bad weather, didn't get a chance to go. So when you look at it from that perspective, that's just an example where you had one person, 3 bad experiences not being able to go. But again, her mindset is so strong, and she's ready to go back and challenge herself again. The first one was the English Channel. It was done in July of 2010. It was the initial swim as part of the 7. Now, going into the English Channel, I didn't have the aspirations to go and do the Ocean 7. In fact, I didn't even know anything about it until after I completed the English Channel. But as you can see in this picture, this is Dover Harbor. Dover is a small town right on the southern coast of England. Flew into London, and we went right down along the coast here. This is Dover Harbor. Famous harbor for a lot of you in history. A lot of great naval battles took place right outside of here. But as you can see, Speedo cap and goggles is the traditional attire. A lot of people say, well, why not wear a wetsuit? Why not wear this or do this? Well, the reality is we're not allowed to wear that. It was done first by Captain Matthew Webb in August of 1875, and I can guarantee back then they didn't have wetsuits. He swam the English Channel on a diet of whiskey and chili. I like to think he was drunk and gassy the whole way across. But it was amazing when you look at how that has progressed over the years and how we swim. And the whole reason for that, again, is to not make it easy. We want the challenge to be hard. And although over 1,000 people have actually swam the English Channel since 1875, pretty much every single one of them have done it the right way. So when you go to swim the English Channel, you have to sign up for a membership through the CSA, which is the Channel Swimming Association. They've been around for almost 100 years. And are obviously an outfit out of southern England. And you sign up for the membership fee, and then you have to do a 6-hour qualifying swim in sub 60-degree water. And then you have to book your boat pilot. The boat pilot, there's probably about a dozen of them, And it's really just a matter of they don't recommend anybody to. So there are a lot of phone calls, a lot of Skype, a lot of emails, trying to figure out who exactly you want to use. Once we picked the boat, we had it all set for July. I think my tide was between the 18th and the 26th. And really, it's a window of opportunity, they call it in our sport. And you have 4 people slotted in each of those windows of opportunity. There's a lot of people that challenge themselves and they want to swim the English Channel, but the reality is you have to wait. It's not just sign up and go over and do it. In today's day and age, it's about a 2 to 3 year period if you want to get a first slot on that tide schedule. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's hard. Now, I got very lucky, and in August or in October of '09, I signed up and I somehow secured a first slot in July of 2010, which was great. But it doesn't always work that way. And how it works, again, if you're a 3rd or 4th slot during that tide window, if that first person doesn't go for 2 or 3 days, that second person doesn't go for 2 or 3 days, you're a 3rd or 4th person. You've invested all that time and money and training, you're not even getting a chance to go. So that's the reality of it. That's why if there's any English Channel aspirants in this room, know that it's going to take maybe 2 to 3 years, but you really want to get that first slot out there. Went over to England, and I remember getting down to the coast, and as I had mentioned when I left Pittsburgh, it was pretty hot. And that's the biggest challenge we face, is trying to acclimate. So I got down there, I got in, and this day it was a pretty rough day. It was the first day I got out there, and the water was about 57, 58, which again is very, very trying on the body. But I had about a 10-day period where I was trying to acclimate. So every day I would kind of float in the morning, get into a hypothermic state, come out of the water shaking, dry off, get something to eat, get some tea, come back a couple hours later and basically do the same thing again. And that's what I have found, that especially being able to, when I go to these places around the world, that's the best way to do it, is to acclimate to the cold, is to be in that water, because I don't have that coming from where I was at. English Channel is about 22 miles from Dover to Cap Grenay. It's a small tip right here in northern France. So you got Belgium right here. It's in northern France. Calais, maybe some of you have heard of them. If you've ever taken the ferry across the channel, you go from Dover to Calais. If you take the channel, obviously you come out down in Paris. And a lot of people said to me, there's a perfectly good boat that goes across. I prefer the harder route. But that day we left, you saw in the video, I jumped off the boat around 4:04 in the morning. So we started at 4:04 a.m., went into the coast, climbed out, obviously without anybody helping you out. You start out of the water, yell. I had a little glow stick on my cap, walked in by myself, swam across. We got to about 6 hours and 2 minutes across, and I'll never forget it. He said, we're about halfway now, we're in the French shipping channel, and it was amazing. He was spot on, because at 4:08 p.m., 12 hours and 4 minutes later, climbed out on the French coast. The only person to greet me was a young man who was fishing, and we had nothing to say to each other. But there's not bells and whistles and cameras going off and the whole pomp and circumstance, but that's the cool thing about our sport, is the respect we have for each other. It's not about the medals, and it's not about the lights and camera and the action. It's just about the accomplishment of getting across and making it happen. Catalina Channel, as some of you are familiar with, Catalina Island off the coast of Southern California. It is part of an island chain of 8 islands here off the coast. Catalina Island, we started on the northern tip, swam to Palos Verdes, which is just here near the Long Beach Harbor, which is just south of Los Angeles. Sorry, try to move around as best I can here. So we stayed down here in Newport Beach. We took the ride up the coast, and we left for the Catalina Channel, and this is what makes this one very interesting. We actually left at 8:30 at night. And when we got out to the island, it took about 2.5 hours to get out to Doctor's Cove right here on the northern tip of Catalina Island. And most people say, why on earth would you possibly want to jump into the dark Pacific at 11:30 at night knowing what's swimming down below you? Well, the reality is they tell us that the water's a lot calmer at that point, a lot less boat traffic. It was an interesting journey, because I started out in the harbor at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, reading this instructions from the boat pilot, who was about 75 years old. He had 2 hearing aids. He's talking to us about making sure that I get away from the boat before he starts the engine. So I made sure that everybody on our crew had a whistle. They were going to make sure that this guy could hear that I was not near the prop anymore when he gunned the 50-foot dive boat that we were swimming on. We got out to the island again around 11:15, 11:30. And I remember it being very rough out there. They shined a spotlight on the coast, and it was pitch black, and they said, that's where you're starting from. So I'm standing there, my buddy gets in the water, and God bless him, because it was the first time he had ever kayaked. And of course, I toss him into the black ocean, and it's just rocking out there. He gets out, he's going, and all of a sudden, whoop, flips over. All of my stuff down to the bottom of the Pacific. I'm standing there on the boat looking out, just being, oh boy, here we go. And I remember getting a little chilly because the wind's blowing, so again, I'm just standing there getting nice and cold, and I go back in the boat, I come out, get back in the boat, he's getting on the kayak. Finally, we hop off and swim in, start off within 50 yards and slam right into it. They have this kelp out there. It's as thick as ropes, and we're swimming and just slamming right into it, and it's not a good feeling when you're hitting things and you can't see anything. And I remember starting off, and for about 6 or 7 hours, it was just pitch black. But you can see in the distance here, sun coming up over the ocean was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever witnessed, not only because I knew I was getting near being done, but as you can imagine, people always say, what's your most favorite part about all this? And it's, you know, the people we meet and the places we go are amazing, but what I absolutely love is just being out there in the ocean as the sun's rising. It's just so pretty being out there. So we kept going, and about the last mile, there's a shelf, a continental shelf right along the southern coast where about 3 or 4 miles out, the water temperature drops about 8 degrees out of nowhere. So it went from about 66 down to about 58 for the last couple miles. So it just kind of nails you. Swimming, getting closer and closer. And as you know, in California, they have a lot of fog down there. And I remember I was about 2 miles off the coast, and I still couldn't even see California. They're telling me, it's right ahead of you, right ahead of you. And I'm like waving, trying to see this thing, and I can't see anything. But as we get closer, about a mile off the coast, there was about a pod of about 30 dolphins just started going all around me. And that was awesome. Now, at first, it's a little scary to see something fly up next to you in the ocean, but after you realize what they are, it's okay. So we got up to the coast, and I remember I got rolled up on the rocks, and they didn't tell me it was a rocky coastline. They had these boulders, and I get rolled up on it. I stand up, and I'm bleeding all over the place. And the boat has a machine that puts the dinghy in the water, and the dinghy is supposed to come in and get you. Well, the dinghy machine broke that day, and I got the boat pilot yelling at me, honking the horn to swim about 1,000 yards out into the ocean, bleeding all over the place. Well, I wasn't really feeling that, and we had a little bit of an argument, yelling back and forth. But finally, the one lady was nice enough. She came in with the kayak, gave me the kayak, and then I paddled back out. But 9 hours, 15 minutes, that swim was a lot straighter. I mean, really, it's a straight line. You don't have a whole lot of currents flowing through here. Unlike the English Channel, where you start here and you kind of get pushed north, and then you get pushed south, and then you swim in like an S pattern. But here, you swim straight across. So a little bit shorter of a distance as far as time-wise. The third swim was the Molokai Channel. Molokai is an island, very remote island off the coast of east of Oahu. And this channel, again, is pretty unknown. Most people, when they go to Hawaii, they stay at the Big Island or Maui or Honolulu, things of that nature. But Molokai is a very remote island right here. And this channel was the longest distance-wise out of the 7 at 27 miles in distance. And it's a lot, as you can see in this picture, the swells out there at times were 8, 10, 12 foot high. My buddy Vince here in the corner would say that sometimes he would see me way up here swimming, and then the boat would switch positions, and then just like that, as you can imagine, it's when you're out in the middle of the Pacific just getting rocked, it's rough. And again, coming from Pittsburgh, where I got nice flat lakes to train on, it's a lot to overcome. Started off the island of Molokai about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:15. About an hour or two into the swim, I remember we jumped off this volcanic rock, and my paddleboarder was next to me, and we had a kayaker in the water the whole time with me. And I'm swimming, and then the most beautiful thing, again, the sunrise. I remember looking over, and it's just coming up over the ocean, just so pretty. And all of a sudden, wham, get a Portuguese man-of-war just latches itself right on my face. If you're aware of what a Portuguese man-of-war is, it's one of the more lethal forms of jellyfish. Now, that pretty much hurt like someone put an iron right on my face. But it was not as bad as what we were trying to avoid of the box jellyfish. Now, the box jellyfish, for somebody my size at 215 pounds, probably can take 1, maybe 2 before it's instant paralysis. Somebody much smaller wouldn't get that lucky. So it's really serious whenever you're saying to yourself, okay, not only are we jumping off a volcanic rock, trying not to cut ourselves because they're having conversations about tiger sharks in the water, but then we got to worry about these damn jellyfish that can take you out too. So it's a lot to think about whenever you're swimming 27 miles in the open ocean. But throughout that day, we got about halfway across, and I remember them yelling out to me, and I'd already taken 3 of these stings. So I was getting really irritated. My face just was completely red. I had, tentacle marks all down my arms, and I could just feel these toxins going throughout my system. And we had taken some Dramamine because the wave action was just so much for me. So I'm, getting tired, taking Dramamine, stung by jellyfish. And then all I remember is thinking about this conversation about the sharks the night before. They're telling me, well, when do you want to get pulled? I'm like, I don't know. And they said, well, don't worry, the great whites, they attack from below, but the tigers will circle you first before we have to pull you out. So I'm like, great, awesome. So all these things are on my mind when I'm trying to get across this channel. We get halfway across, and I remember them yelling out to me, you're an hour under the record. And I was just like, no matter what I was feeling, I knew that I had to keep pushing forward. I had to keep going because I wanted to make sure I got this done. And we came into Sandy's Beach, which is on the east coast of Oahu. And Sandy's Beach is also known as Breakneck Beach because the highest per capita spinal cord injuries in the world because these large swells crash into about 6 inches of water. And there's signs everywhere, no swimming. So naturally, after 27 miles of navigation, avoiding the sharks, getting stung by jellyfish, the place you want to finish at is Breakneck Beach, right? It makes perfect sense. So I remember being about 50 yards off the coast, and I'm swimming as hard as I can. There's a really strong riptide right along the coast of Oahu. And I remember seeing this turtle in the water. And he was looking up at me, and I think we were just looking at each other, but I wasn't getting anywhere. I remember he was sitting there kind of floating, looking at me. I'm swimming as hard as I can. Finally, shot through the current. Tide picks us up, crashes right into the waves. And you saw in the video, the guy's shaking as he's running up to me. I'm just running up and flop down on the ground. And I remember the Hawaiians, they came running up and said, where'd you swim from, brah? I was like, Molokai. They're like, Molokai. Oh my God. But it was, it was interesting because when you stand on Oahu, you can barely see Molokai. That's how far away it is. And we got up and finished in 12 hours and 12 minutes, and we came in about 41 minutes under the record, which was really great for, again, our charity to bring legitimacy, to get more sponsors and things like that. So I knew that was going to help out with a lot of things. Strait of Gibraltar was the 4th one. The Strait of Gibraltar is between Spain and Morocco. Most notably between Europe and Africa. But it's a very short stretch of water between Tarifa, the most southern tip of Spain, and just east of Tangiers, which is northern Morocco. It's only about 8 to 9 miles across this body of water. So again, compared to the last one, it was a very short swim. It was nice. It was probably my most favorite swim because I actually got to swim, if you saw in the video, with 3 other friends. My friend Jamie was there from San Francisco, my friend Jen from Los Angeles, my buddy Oliver from England. And my other friend Michelle and Kim, they were on this boat, and the next day they went. So it was nice that they could support us, and then we could support them. Again, Gibraltar, we left from southern Spain, 3 hours, 44 minutes. The water in early May there is colder. It was only about 59 degrees. In the summertime, it's much warmer in the Mediterranean. But that day, as you can see from the water, very calm, very calm. But it was really pretty coming into swimming up to Africa. A lot of the locals were in the water fishing or birds. The sun's out. It's very pretty. But I remember one story from that swim. I was about a mile off the coast, and all of a sudden I look over, and this boat pulls up. Looks like a Navy SEAL boat, one of those banana boats. And these guys got machine guns strapped to their chests, and they got these all black outfits on. I'm thinking, oh my God, what is that? And it turned out it was the Moroccan narcotic police. Well, they were making sure we weren't smuggling drugs across the channel. Thank God we did have our passports that day, or we would have gotten out of the water at that point. But I came back to Tarifa. I was having a local interview with one of our news stations back in Pittsburgh, and the guy said, where do they think you were hiding the drugs in your Speedos? So, but again, Gibraltar, it's a short swim. It's a great first channel if you're getting into open water. Just a very beautiful part of the world if you have been there. That leads us into the 3 main channels I want to talk about, and they were the last 3, which were probably the most challenging to me. The 5th channel was the Tsugaru channel. Again, it's a very unknown part of the world. The Tsugaru channel is actually this body of water that goes right through here. So you have the Sea of Japan, Pacific Ocean. Tokyo is right about here in the central part of the country. We flew into Tokyo. We took a bullet train all up along the coast here. And we stayed in what's called the Aomori Prefecture. This body of water is only about 16 miles across. So again, shorter than the English Channel, shorter than Catalina, not one of the longer ones. But one thing I look at this tying in a concept of business and endurance is really perseverance, because sometimes we're thrown into situations where we don't really know what's going to happen. And this part of the world, the last person that had swam this channel was in 1990, so we don't really know much about it, and this was in 2012. We took the boat pilot out. We had organized it. It was very difficult because of the language barrier was number one. Luckily, we did have somebody that translate for us, but we got up there, up to Aomori Prefecture, and of course they eat, the food there is excellent. It's fished out of the ocean every day, but they don't have a lot of carbohydrates, you know, so they would make me the American breakfast every morning, and plenty of rice. And my brother and I were up there. There was no public transportation. We really couldn't talk to many people, and we had to walk down the hill every day to go for a swim and walk back up. So we were definitely setting the pace for a lot of swimmers over the next 2 years since to go over there. And one thing about this channel, we look at perseverance, because when I started off this swim, it was very difficult because it was rough that morning. It was about, again, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We start early because we want to take advantage of as much sunlight, daylight as you can. And I remember coming off the coast and jumping in the water and swimming over, and they told me just climb out, or just touch this rock and go. And the rock was about the size of 2 of these tables put together. Well, being stubborn, I'd heard stories about, you know, making sure you get out of the water at the start. We don't want anyone to question whether or not that we got it done. So I jumped off the boat, and I'm going over, and it's just rocking out there. The ocean is just punishing that morning. And I go over to the rock, and I climb out, and I have a video of just walking down this rock, and they're yelling over to me, you know, be careful, don't dive in. And this rogue wave catches me, and I slip and fall. And right now I have 2 pretty deep scars still from 2 years ago on my shins. And I cut my hand all down my arm. And I remember looking down, looking up, looking down, and there was this nice little pool of blood starting to form between both of my legs. And that was the first part of the day that was really hard, but I knew that no matter what, I was on my 5th channel. I wanted to be the first to do them all in the first try. We'd invested close to $17,000 in this journey. You know, just an example of flights over there, and the boat itself was $6,000 just for the day. And my brother and I got over there, and I jump off the rock, and I'm looking down. I just said, you know what? It is what it is. We got to do it. Not think about it. Just go and just go. And the bottom line is, when you believe it can be done, it can be done. And I was told this is only going to take about 8 hours. So I'm thinking, okay, I can handle this. You know, despite bleeding out in a water known for predatory sharks, I mean, I can get this done. So I'm swimming, and as you can see in this body of water, it's just unlike anything I'd ever really swum in. And the chop is what we call sandpaper chop, and you don't feel like you can ever really grasp the water as you're swimming. And the large ocean swells, or if you're flat in a pool, you can really feel that water. But the challenge of that was the fact of you could see this landscape. And I got to about 7 hours in, 8 hours in, I look up and I'm thinking, okay, good, like 8 hours. I look up and I realize I'm nowhere near Hokkaido. 9 hours. 10 hours. How far am I? 5 miles. 11 hours. How far am I? 5 miles. 12 hours. How far am I? 5 miles. 13 hours. How far am I? 5 miles. You're seeing a pattern here. You can imagine what it's like swimming in that water hour after hour after hour. Around the 12th hour, sun starts to go down. Water temperature off the coast of Hokkaido went from 68 down to 59. These continental shelves get you every time. But it was the last couple miles was in water that was as cold as the English Channel. And after you're going 13 hours, you're getting rocked out there. You're used to a certain temperature, and the floor drops out for me. That's one challenge I faced. And then my brother's on the boat, and this is the first time he had ever been on a channel swim, so he's freaking out, and he's yelling at the guy, you don't understand, if I don't bring him home, Mom's going to kill me, you know? So I'm going, and the sun's dropping, and I remember being about maybe 2 or 3 miles off the coast, and I couldn't see anything, and I'm just getting rocked again. And then they all of a sudden tell me, okay, you got to sprint because we got to break through this tide. This tide is just taking you out into the Pacific Ocean. The Sea of Japan is just flowing, and you're just getting caught in this tide. So again, after 13 hours, I'm starting to get freezing cold, and then someone tells you guys to start sprinting. So I'm going as hard as I can. That last hour, I broke through that current, and we came in, and I started running into the boat wouldn't go in any further because there was these nets, these large Japanese fishing nets in the water. So the boat couldn't see them. He's yelling at me in Japanese, and of course I can't understand anything they're saying to me, but the other guy yells out, you got to swim in the last 500 yards by yourself. Well, this was a little disturbing because about an hour before, right next to me, a large shark about the size of a truck swam right up next to me. And that's a lot to take in because, you know, at that point I didn't really care what happened to me. But when you think about it afterward, you know, I'm thinking, oh, I'm bleeding out in the water. Maybe this thing's following me the whole way. But we came across, so that was one challenge. And I finished, came in, it was dark, It was nasty, couldn't see anything. Had to swim the last 500 yards by myself into the pitch black, and we finished at 15 hours and 55 minutes. But I talk about perseverance in this because what it comes down to is in life and in our work, and we're sometimes thrown things that we're not sure what's going to happen, right? And we jump into it and we go at it, but what it comes down to is if we don't quit, we're going to eventually get there. It's a great message because you can imagine the mindset of being 8 hours in, thinking you're done or thinking you're about to accomplish something and then realizing you'll end up going twice that far. So message there is perseverance and making sure that no matter what, you're going to eventually get there, but you got to keep pushing. The Cook Strait was number 6, New Zealand between the North and South Islands. It's actually separated by this body of water right here, made famous for Captain Cook when he first sailed through here. You actually swim, you could see from east to west. So you're going to go north to south, you're actually swimming east to west. And it's a part of the world, it's very beautiful. If you've been to Australia or New Zealand before, it's a very active culture in Wellington, which is the capital, which is right in the southern part of the Northern Island. And it's an area that's, again, a very fickle body of water. We actually had one large boat accompanying us the whole way, and we had 2 ribs in the water. When I say we, it was actually a friend of mine, Craig, that swam it with me. This is the South Island off in the distance. This body of water, again, is about 16, 18 miles. Typically cold water, 55, 65, somewhere in there. It's sporadic. Throughout the day, I think it was about 58, 59. So it wasn't too cold, but it definitely wasn't warm. We had to keep moving. The challenge that I faced was more of a mental barrier, and that was before I even left for New Zealand, because there's a lot of things out there that can take you away in life, and avoid the noise is the concept I speak about, because when we get out in the workforce or we're in school or wherever it is, you're going to find sharks that you face on a daily basis, and you do your best to try to avoid these sharks in our daily routine. They're going to take you away from your goal, but you have to stay focused and avoid that noise in your life. And when I look at this article, which was put out by Fox News, you could see this was about a week and a half before I left. This video, if you see it on YouTube, is pretty traumatic because they interview this fisherman who's shaking and he's got blood on him, and he talks about a 49-year-old film director who he saw being mauled by three great white sharks not more than 5 miles from where we were going to swim at. In the video, you also see the police in Wellington. The gentleman right here, as you can see in his hand, is actually a machine gun, and he's firing into the water. It looks like something right out of a Hollywood movie, trying to kill the animal as it's eating this man. And it was also hard because up top in the sky, you could see a helicopter overhead, and they're also firing down at it. So when you see a video like that, knowing that you're about to travel halfway around the world, it's not something you want to tell your family and friends about. Mom found out about this one later, so it was good. But you know, I say avoid the noise because you can imagine, again, the mindset of seeing something like that, knowing that you're about to go swim for a long period of time in waters where this just happened. I remember my buddy Craig phoning me up from Colorado, and he said, "You sure they're going to let us go?" I said, "I don't know. We'll find out when we get there." This was number 6. I knew I had to get it done, and you know, we get down there and we go across, and of course nothing happened. It was a beautiful day. The challenge I faced was toward the other end. My friend Craig was a little bit slower toward the end. I just wanted to power through and get it done. And I remember coming into the coast, and this gentleman right here, Philip Rush, he's probably the most well-known open water swimmer in history. He's more like the Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods of open water, because back in the late 80s, he actually completed on a good day a triple English Channel swim. So he went from England to France to England and then back to France. Now that requires a hell of a lot of dedication and time to train for something like that. And not only to have Mother Nature cooperate with you, because as you're going over and coming back, those tides are shifting. So that was a challenge. So when you got somebody like that next to you yelling at you, you do whatever the heck he says. And I remember we get to the other side, and we're about 1 or 2 kilometers off the coast, and he had told us at that point, if I wanted to, I could start sprinting in. I could break away from Craig if I had to, and then finish into the coast. So I'm going in, and I remember getting close, and it was dark, and then out of nowhere I started sprinting, but I realized there was nobody beside me. And I didn't have a blinker on my hat, I didn't have the goggles on my head that were the right ones. I had my dark goggles on for the sun all day, and I didn't have my tinted goggles, so I couldn't see anything. Nobody could see me in the water, and then I started thinking about these sharks, right? So out of nowhere, Philip comes flying up, and he's holding on a rope, and he comes flying up, bouncing, and kind of shouts a string of expletives at me, as to why I went ahead and was so stupid for swimming away like that. But I got nervous, and toward the end, I just wanted to get it done. So I'm sprinting in, and when you got somebody like that yelling at you, it's like, yes, sir, whatever you say. And I remember being closer and closer and closer, and he's telling me, okay. And I said, hey, can I have a feed? He said, no, you're not feeding. Keep swimming. Go as hard as you've ever swum before. And swimming in, filming, and finally touched the wall. Couldn't see anything. Got back on the boat. The fumes were making me nauseous, and I was fortunately dry heaving the whole way back to Wellington. So, but it was a very unique challenge. But when you look at it from a perspective of what you thought about and what the mindset was, to know again that we want to avoid that noise in our life, because we're going to come across those sharks each and every day. The final swim was the North Channel between Northern Ireland and Scotland. It's a very, again, notorious body of water. Since 1924, there have been 14 successes. So when you compare it to the English Channel at close to 1,200, a very different area. And the main reason for this, it has a stigma, because when you swim between Northern Ireland and Scotland, this water on average is anywhere between 50 and 55 degrees. 50-degree water is about as warm as what you're drinking in your ice trough there. I mean, it's very, very demanding. And in order to have the ability to swim across this, you really have to respect and honor the challenge and what it is you're up against. And the day that we went, it was a beautiful day, and it was calm, it was peaceful. The water was not bad at all, it was not rough. I was told horror stories about getting stung by thousands of these lion's mane jellyfish. The biggest one ever recorded, the bell, was as big as the table you're sitting at. And its tentacles were about 50 feet long. And they have it in the Belfast Museum, and it is just an ugly, ugly creature. But I could think about just seeing these things all the time. But luckily, I saw a bunch of his smaller brothers and sisters out there. But again, there's been horror stories of just swimming into massive pods of jellyfish and storms and frigid water. And in order to overcome challenges like this, you have to learn, again, to acclimate to that cold of water. One way that I found was to sit in water that was at 32 degrees or under, and really for the mental side of the training, not the physical side. So what you see in this picture is a 300-gallon cattle trough that I have sitting on my deck in Pittsburgh. And this is in the middle of the winter last year. And really what I do is, again, the mental side of breaking it open with an axe, sitting in it for as long as I could possibly take. And what it does is it builds, not the physical side, because to acclimate to that cold, you have to be in that water, but I don't have that ability in Pittsburgh to do that. But in the wintertime, it's really not much of a problem. But in the summertime, as you get out, and it's June, July, August, it's getting very hot. So in order to overcome 52, 51-degree water, you have to subject yourself to certain things. So that's the dedication that I was giving to that. And I look at it like I was on number 7. I was about to achieve something that hasn't been done before. I was giving it everything I could possibly think of, I could throw at this thing. And I look at it from a perspective of, we should always have that plan A in our life, and we should never have plan B. Because plan B is going to be failure. Plan B is not what we want to accomplish. And a lot of people are like, that kind of makes sense. But when you have plan A, I was going to swim the North Channel. I was going to survive in 52-degree water. I was going to become the first person to complete the Ocean 7. And I knew that I had to take significant risks to do that. I would train in the open water in the lakes around Pittsburgh when the water was that warm. And it's about the worst pain that you'll ever feel. But what I knew is if I could overcome that pain, that there wasn't anything out there that I couldn't overcome. So I purposely put myself in there, and obviously we know why we're doing it. We know why we're there. But I knew that I had to do that. And I look at it from plan A, plan B. Plan A, if you put yourself in the mindset of maybe Martin Luther King as he walked the streets of Birmingham, Alabama, or Mother Teresa as she volunteered in the slums of Calcutta, or Neil Armstrong as being rocketed to the moon. These are people that I look at as my heroes and what I want to accomplish, right? Do you think that they had plan B in their life? Or any successful entrepreneur, visionary, or world leader in history, do you think they ever had plan B? And these are the kind of people that I look at and I say, this is the mindset, this is the mentality that I want to take into my life, into my work, and to really motivate and inspire other people. So that's the challenge that I look at. And when I went to Northern Ireland and we swam, I knew that no matter what, I was going to get across the channel because there was no plan B. Plan B was being hauled out of that water lifeless. And I know that's hard for some people to hear, especially family and friends, but I was going to get across that channel no matter what. And when we left, it was 53 degree water that day, 53.5 to be exact. So it was a little warmer than 50, thank God. But we started swimming, and I got about 3 hours into it, and I was taking in way too many carbohydrates. My stomach was just killing me. And I had a lead weight in there, and then fortunately that all came out, and that was the first time I ever got sick out in the open ocean. I remember the boat pilot, the whole boat, they're all just staring at me, about 10 of them on the boat, they're just dead silent, you know. And I pushed through that, you know, because I knew that I had to keep going. So I got some hot tea in me, a little banana, and I felt good. Kept moving. About 6 hours in, that overwhelming feeling of this is actually going to happen, you know? And my body still felt I was cold, but I still wasn't showing signs of hypothermia. And one way they do that is they look at you, they'll ask you questions. Every half hour they'll say, if they think you're getting cold, they'll say, what's your middle name? What street did you grow up on? What's your dad's birthday? Like things that you know, but you don't, it's not like, what's your first name? Something that you have to actually think about for a second. So we're getting across, and the other thing is they look at your fingers, and if they start splitting across, starting to go like this, you're losing your sensory motor skills, and your brain is starting to cool, and your fingers start to spread. So they call it the claw in open water swimming. So if you see that happening, that's another sign. The other way is they're checking your stroke rate every 5 minutes, 1 minute. Again, if you're starting to show those signs, they're checking your stroke rate. If your stroke rate drops more than 10% throughout that channel, so if my average stroke rate is 70 and it drops down to 63 or lower, that's obviously showing signs of hypothermia. Luckily, I kept that stroke rate nice and high. And I remember we're about 2 miles off the coast, and my brother yells out at me, he goes, "When's my birthday?" I'm like, "August 30th, 1979. He's like, "Shut up, keep swimming," So it was good, but that's what they're checking. They're making sure that I'm coherent and that I'm good. But we got about halfway across, and I just knew it was happening, and I kept swimming in. And the overwhelming feeling of touching that rock and knowing that, again, getting them all done on the first try, and it was just a beautiful feeling to know that because of what I put myself through and the mental side of that training, that I knew that every day when I went over there and I acclimated, that I was going to get it done. And that's really what it came down to, is that plan A, and knowing that I had to get it done. Since 1924, 14 people had ever swum that channel. 12 of them lived in Northern Ireland, Scotland, or England. So when you look at it from that perspective, I knew I was up against the wall, and I had to get them across that channel. You really have to know what you're doing it for, and when I look at it, when I put myself through this kind of things, we know what we're doing it for. And Ben, I had mentioned to you earlier, Ben was born on Christmas Day, and he didn't make it to Valentine's Day. And it's very hard when you hear the story of a mother recounting the tale of the funeral director coming in and zipping her son up in a body bag and wheeling him away on a cart. That was one of the worst days of my life, to hear that story and to see the way that she talked to me about that. And again, why I'm saying these kind of things is you have to see what it is, the mindset of what I'm doing and what I want to accomplish and what I'm doing it for. Because if we realize that every breath is a gift, we realize that we're not all given the gift of health. We're not all given that ability to become a great father, maybe the future president, maybe could have cured cancer. But Ben didn't get that shot. I have that shot. You have that shot to go and accomplish something amazing. And that's all we have to do, is believe in ourselves that anything is possible. And Ben, this little pendant his mother gave me to carry with us the whole time. She had given it to me. Somebody had given it to her when Ben was going through his struggles, and she wanted me to have it. So I took it over with me the whole time. These little guys up here are called Beads of Courage. I don't know if anybody's heard of that charity, but what it is they send you, if you're about to do, like climb a mountain or do a swim or a big cycle or something very challenging in your life, this charity will send these to you, and you basically take them with you, and then you accomplish your goal. And when you come back, you send them back to the home, and then they'll distribute to them a family, and they'll tell the story of what you went through and why these beads can give these families courage. So, when you get out there and you know what you're fighting for, when I'm lathering up and you're taken out on the boat and it's pitch black and you're about to jump into and swim to a place you can't even see, these are the kind of things that I think about. And the concept that I bring to the table is what I like to call is the third boat. You saw pictures in the water of a kayaker, and then there was a large support boat beside me, but there's also a boat out there that nobody else sees. And the third boat, to me, I always vision a boat beside me, and in that boat I see my friends, I see my family, I see my friend Summer, who in 2006, her boyfriend decided that she wasn't going to be with anybody else, turned a gun on her, then turned a gun on himself. That was a very difficult day in my life. Other than that, I had a friend, Jimmy, who had died of a drug overdose at the age of 23 as well. And it was hard. And then 6 months later, my cousin died at 21, and there was just a point where 3 people around my age were all passing away. And again, it was something that I always want to remember. And I want to remember them and know that, you know, they're 6 feet under and they're not getting that breath of gift that I have. My Uncle Mike, who's also on that boat, he died of colon cancer not long ago. And I remember he was the first person I called when I got through the English Channel, and I called him on the other side. And what he taught me was, as an entrepreneur, he went to MIT at 16 years old, probably the smartest man I ever met in my life. Developed the video phone at Alcoa as a computer engineer. And what he said to me is, after he went out and he started his own business, and he said, do something each day. You know, what he said was, you know, find something you love to do and get somebody to pay you to do it. And I love that concept, because if there's anybody here that has started their own business, you know, you feel that sense of pride, and you feel that sense of accomplishment. And what he said was, you know, do something you love and get somebody to pay you to do it. And that's what I was telling my friends over the weekend. I said, you know, this is really exciting to me, because this is what I'm building toward in my life. And, you know, and to honor him that way, and the fact that he was a successful businessman, I'm slowly building my business. It means a lot to me. So again, it means a lot to be here today. And probably the biggest motivation in my life and my hero is my grandmother. This little smiling guy right here is me. And what my grandparents taught me was that they came from blue-collar roots. My grandfather was one of 13, had to go work in the mines in 6th grade. You know, my grandmother graduated, you know, school and went to become a secretary. And, you know, so they lived the blue-collar lifestyle in Pittsburgh. And, you know, as you know, if you know anything about Western PA, that's what we pride ourselves on. But what they taught me in their life, their story was that money, it doesn't matter what's in your pocketbook. It matters the respect and dedication of those around you. There was a recent study that was done that there's 25 million millionaires in the world. So if you think making millions is going to make you special, it's not. There's over 2,000 billionaires in the world. So again, if you're looking at the mindset of trying to become somebody like a Martin Luther King or a Mother Teresa, you're not going to distance yourself by doing that. And that's what I try to teach kids. I say it's about working hard and being financially successful, don't get me wrong, but you want to find other ways to push yourself and follow those passions. And what my grandma taught me was, it didn't matter what was in their pocketbook, because my grandparents didn't have a lot of money, but what they had was, again, the respect of their community, and that meant more than any amount of money in the world. And that's what I try to talk to young people about, is say, you know, don't focus on becoming wealthy. That will come when you find something you love to do, and you're going to work hard, and you're going to get there. But again, look at it from a perspective of family, work, and passions. And one thing I really wanted to emphasize today is we got to focus on our work and our family and life and our passions, but we want to make sure we keep them all in check. And I think that maybe some of us focus too much on work, and maybe some of us focus too much on maybe our family, or some of us focus too much on our passions. But more than likely, as all of you are here today, and you know a lot of people that are financially successful, and they focus a lot on their jobs, and a lot of my clients as a financial advisor, one of the hardest conversations that I ever heard was from some of my clients who were very wealthy, and they said, you know what, Darren, I've worked my life away. I didn't get a chance to see my kids grow up. I didn't spend a lot of time with my spouse. I didn't get to see those opportunities. And I think that it brings it all back into perspective, because these guys are the guys that are helping me get through my journey, as they're paying all the costs to get me across, and every dollar we fundraise goes back to the kids. But when you hear that story, maybe some of you can either relate to that or know somebody who can. It's the fact of, don't forget to focus on number one, which is your family. And don't forget to also pursue those passions in your life, because this was something that I had no clue about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before I got into any of this. I had no clue I was capable of doing this thing. But what it taught me was, it took me around the world, and it made me some amazing stories that I could tell. But it's not that I'm anything special, right? God didn't give me the Michael Phelps body. I'm probably better off lifting weights than swimming long distances in the ocean. So again, especially to younger people, you know, challenge yourself to find that passion in your life, and don't be afraid to answer that calling and pursue it. One of the greatest stories I'd ever heard was from a Navy SEAL. David Goggins lost a lot of his company in Afghanistan. He was a Navy SEAL, and he came back, and he inspired me because he became an endurance athlete. And he was somebody I was reading a lot about during the time I was transitioning. And you know, what he had done is he'd come back and he raised his money for Wounded Warrior Foundations. He's doing all these runs around the world, and he's remembering his brothers he lost in combat. And one of the things I read in one of his blogs, and it stuck with me forever, and he said he challenged everybody to do something each and every day that we don't want to do. So if you think about that, if we did 365 things each year that we didn't want to do, how much stronger of a person would you become? It's getting up, hitting the snooze alarm instead, going out and going for a run. taking a few extra hours to teach our kids how to volunteer, maybe go to the hospital, do something like that. Do something each and every day that we don't want to do. I took that to heart, and I absolutely love it, and that's why when I do these things, I don't think, I just do it. Don't think about it so much. We find in life that we think a lot. Just do it. Don't think about it, just do it. It's going to take you out of your comfort zone. It might hurt, but guess what? You're going to get through it. And then in the end, it's going to make you a stronger person. And this, in psychology world, is called the hardening process. And the hardening process is each challenge that we go through in life makes us a stronger individual. So if we're doing something every day that we don't want to do, it's going to make you a much stronger individual. And that's what's going to make you a lot more successful in your family, challenging and working with your kids and inspiring and motivating them to become strong in your work, being a leader in the workforce, getting out there and getting that job done when you don't want to do it maybe. And then also following your passions in life, because when you follow your passions, you might find something that you didn't know was possible. So again, I challenge everybody today to have that third boat in your life. Find something that's going to motivate and inspire you each and every day to get through those hard times. Don't be afraid to pursue your passions or whatever that calling is. Don't be afraid to take care of your family, number one. Always remember that. And always work hard, because in the end, hard work is what's going to get you there. Thank you.